Listening to the Fierce Fatty Podcast, episode 123, Fat and Trans Identities Intersecting. I'm your host, Finny Wellesby. Let's do it!
Perfect!
I'm Victoria Wellesby, TEDx speaker, best-selling author and fat activist. I have transformed my life from hating my body with desperately low self-esteem to being a courageous and confident, fierce fatty who loves every inch of this jelly. Society teaches us living in a fat body is bad, but what if we spent less time, money, and energy on the pursuit of thinness and instead focused on the things that actually matter, like if pineapple on pizza should be outlawed, or if the mullet was the greatest haircut of the 20th century. So, how do you stop negative beliefs about your fat body controlling your life? It's the Fierce Fatty Podcast. Let's begin. Hello and welcome to this episode, my sweaty nippled sex demons. How you doing? How's life? Good? Good. Hey, welcome to this episode. We're talking about trans shit today. And just want to give you a trigger warning at the top of the show here. I'll also give you more when we're at close to the time, but we're going to be talking about gender dysphoria, also transphobia in the medical system, fatphobic beliefs, and cishet men nonsense. So if that's not feeling good for you today, then skip this episode. But if you're like, I'm not sure, we'll see when we get there. I'll tell you when I'm gonna say certain things. Okay. All right, so hey, 1, 2, 3, welcome to the episode. First thing I just wanted to share with you is that if you are a social worker or in the mental health field or are interested in that type of stuff, or are fat or are a human, you might be interested to know that the International Journal of Social Work Values and Ethics, Volume 19, has a piece in there which is called Weight Stigma as a Violation of the NASW Code of Ethics, a Call to Action. NASW, I'm guessing it's National Association of Social Workers? Question mark? I'm sure it's something like that. Anyway, so Nancy Ellis Ordway and Virginia Ramsayer Winter have written this piece. I'm going to give you a little excerpt here. It's going to be about a minute. So this is something that's come out in 2022, which says, weight stigma is a violation of the Social Work Code of Ethics. Given that weight loss attempts have been shown to be harmful and ineffective and that they increase weight stigma, the National Association of Social Workers, that's what I said, isn't it? National Association of Social Workers urgently needs to revise its response to weight loss endorsement. Social determinants of health, a robust indicator of population well-being, are ignored when interventions focus on decreasing the body size of individuals. When considering interventions, the field of social work has responsibility to consider the evidence of what helps as well as what harms. As social workers, we need to examine our own attitudes for the biases that may harm the very people we are directed to help. The Code of Ethics gives us clear direction when applied to the topic of weight stigma. Cool. So if you are being told by a social worker, or if you're a social worker and you're being told by your boss or other social workers that you need to tell people to lose weight, you can say it is a violation of the National Association of Social Workers Codes of Ethics, and then point them to this document, which has lots of different things in it, but it's on blah, 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 blah. Let's go to the top. Why is this so slow? I'll link to this in the show notes. It is on page 65. 65. So I'll link to that in the show notes. Show notes, as always, fiercefatty.com/podcast for the actual episode. Always the same, fiercefatty.com/123. It's not always the same, as in it's always the same format. It's the episode number. Lord Jesus. So fiercefatty.com/123. So you can get your little pause on that. But today I wanted to talk about trans stuff specifically because, one, I read this piece that I enjoyed, and two, this trans non-binary incredible human being, me, yeah boy, is going on a date. I've been thinking about this, you know when you say your girl is doing that, and I'm like, what feels right? Because it's not your girl. Your boy feels more, but not really. So what would be a non-gendered version of saying a gender? Yeah, human. Your friend is going on a date tonight. It's my second date with this one guy. And shit is coming up in my brain. And it has been since I realized that I was non-binary. Like, this stuff has just been percolating, and if anyone else is out there dealing with gender stuff, I just wanted to tell you what my brain is saying. No, I'm not the expert on this stuff because I'm still learning and figuring it out, and holy fucking shit, it's so complicated and difficult and blah blah blah. But even if you're not thinking about, gender stuff, this intersects with fat stuff too, so it's interesting. So there is there's a group of psychotherapists, and it's called affirmativecouch.com, and they write pieces. There's a different group of different therapists there. One of them is called M. Addison Tucker, they, them pronouns. And they wrote a piece at the intersection of fat and trans. And so the first half of it is talking about, like, what is fatness and blah, blah, blah. And then next we go into the intersection of fat and trans. And I wanted to read out some of this stuff. Just an FYI about Addison Tucker's identity. Addison says, I'm a fat, queer, able-bodied, neurotypical, white and cisgender femme person. They say they're cisgender in this piece, but then when I went onto their bio, it says that now that they're a non-binary femme. So that would then now currently make them not cisgender, unless, I don't know which one is the more up-to-date. I'm going to presume them being non-binary is the more up-to-date thing. Again, I'm going to link to this in the show notes. And what Addison is saying is that their clients, they have a lot of gender diverse clients, and that they help them with, therapy stuff. And so this is what they've seen as they're a small fat person, they're white, non-binary, neurodivergent, able-bodied. What they have seen with their years of specializing in gender diverse people, and that intersection of fat and trans. Now, I only have my very short-lived experience of non-binary-ness, and it's maybe a year old of me realizing that I'm non-binary, maybe a little bit longer, because I was talking about it with my therapist for a long time, and so I've only got my experience to go on in regards to just a year, and obviously the privileges that I hold as someone who, when people perceive me, they just perceive a woman, right? And so my experience of trans non-binariness is very different from other people in regards to I can walk down the street and not have to fear for my life as a non-binary person, potentially as someone considering me a woman and you know, violence against women. But that's like the privilege that I hold. And on dating sites, men just view me, cishet men just view me as a woman. Even though in my bio, which they don't read, I say I'm not, and then I get, you know, the first message, oh my god, you are such a beautiful woman, you're my dream lady, oh, you're such a womanly figure, and la 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 la, all this fucking stuff. And then I'm like, oh, by the way, thank you, by the way, I'm not a woman. And they're like, who? What? Some people are like, oh yeah, that's whatever, that's fine. And other people are, one guy the other day was like, what's that? And I said, Google it. And then I never heard from it again. Could whatever, who knows why, but you know, I'm just like, I'm done educating these ding dongs. Yes, so let me just read this. This is not too long, but here I'm going to go in. If this doesn't feel good, I'm going to be reading examples of transphobia intersecting with fat phobia, and then I'm going to then give you another trigger warning when I read a specific article about something that happened. I'm going to tell you what that is when I get there. So if this is not feeling good, skip ahead 20 minutes, and I'll see you on the other side for some hilarious sarcasm. Is that sarcasm, me saying hilarious? Some of it's hilarious and also very sad experiences that I've had with men and people's theories about that. So skip ahead maybe 20 minutes and you'll hear that. If not, let's go into this. Okay, so this is from the Post, and so I'm skipping ahead about the fat stuff because we talk about the fat stuff all the time. So we're going to pick up here where it says, at the intersection of fat and trans. When we talk about the above concepts in relation to fatness, they also hold true for other identities. And so they're talking about fat phobia and weight stigma. They also hold true for other identities that experience oppression, e.g. race, gender, ability, sexuality, TGNB, so that's transgender non-binary folks. I always thought it was transgender non-binary folks, but apparently, I'm going to Google that, because TGNB, I always thought it's transgender non-binary, but apparently trans and gender non-binary. Hang on, bear with me, caller. Trans, I'm going to have to Google it. I'm going to have to type in words. Yeah, this says transgender / non-binary. Okay, so whatever. We're just gonna say it could be either or, but it's the same. What is it? Pulling hairs, picking hairs, whatever. Pulling teeth? No, that's whatever. Splitting hairs. There we go. Splitting hairs. On that. So anyway, TGNB is transgender non-binary. So let us continue. TGNB folks experience transphobia, cis sexism, cis heteronormative expectations. I'm going to be talking about that in a second. And pressures to fit into white binary understandings of gender, i.e. what it supposedly means to be a man or a woman. Because TGNB people are often valued based on how well their bodies, quote, fit into these expectations, it follows that they would also be held to standards of body size, shape, and weight. Adding weight stigma to the other pressures that a TGNB person experiences along with their own struggles with their body is like a shaken soda bottle of oppression waiting to explode. Here are several ways that a TGNB person might experience the cumulative and harmful effects of sizeism and fat phobia in the context of their transness. So just a quick terminology thing in case you're like, what the fuck is even going on here? Trans is someone who doesn't identify with the gender that was assigned to them at birth. Cisgender is someone who does identify with the identity they were assigned at birth. Someone who is non-binary doesn't necessarily have to identify as trans. Everyone identifies as different things, but that's kind of like a quick and dirty thing, you know. I would identify as trans non-binary, so that people don't just think I'm a woman. Like, I want them to know This is like I don't know. I'm not messing about. I'm not messing about here, okay? Okay, so a trans masculine person eats. Okay, so we're going to go into examples here. So if this doesn't feel good, skip ahead 10 minutes. A trans masculine person eats as little as possible to shrink his body and appear more androgynous by reducing the width of his hips and size of his chest. Yes. So I was talking to a trans masculine person about them putting on weight and it causing a lot of feelings coming up, and what is going on there. And it's kind of like with a cisgender person, then we can more easily identify if the source of it is fat phobia, whereas with a TGNB person, it's harder because is it dysphoria? Exactly like this example. If you have more fat on your body, is it the fact that you appear more, quote, feminine? Is it also fat phobia, or is it only fat phobia? And literally like everyone, and is it also fucking sexism and all sorts of different things going on, right? And so it's a lot more complicated. And so to kind of be like, okay, well, would, as a trans person trying to be thin temporarily, because obviously we can't be thin long term unless you're thin already, could trying to lose weight, is what I'm trying to say, could trying to lose weight help with my feelings of gender dysphoria, knowing that. And so I work on that temporarily. So I work on those feelings of gender dysphoria and see if I can come up with ways to cope or whatever, or some other tactics or whatever. And then maybe when I put weight back on, because that's what's probably going to happen, then I maybe am in a better place, maybe or maybe not, to deal with this stuff. And so it's complicated, right? So saying don't lose weight, even though we know it's a temporary thing, might not be helpful for people if the feeling of dysphoria is so overwhelming. And it can be for a lot of people. Okay, so moving on. A non-binary person hesitates to go to the gynecologist for worsening pelvic pain because when they initially brought it up, the doctor said that the pain was weight-related. Yep. A trans feminine person fears going out on a date because she can't blend enough with her large belly. An agender person has to search endlessly for affordable clothing that both fits their large body and also feels congruent with their gender. Here's something that I was thinking about the other day is when I was on that documentary, we went to a shopping centre, a mall for North American people, and the crew wanted us to buy some clothes for a photo shoot. And we all said, are there any plus size stores? Because we all know that even though we're in a big city, there's probably not going to be a single place there that has clothes to fit us. And they were like, oh yeah. Yeah, we checked. There's one store and they carry plus. And we got there, and that one store that carries plus, if you're curious, it was New Look. They were like, oh yeah, we carry plus online. And so, there was a scene that was cut from the episode where we all stood outside being like, we fucking told you. We told you there's nowhere for any of us, even, the smaller, medium fat people to go, apart from the guys who went downstairs to this big department store, John Lewis, which is what it's called. And two of them were able to find something that fit. Two of them or more? Yeah, no, three. The men who were bigger than the women, most women, were able to find stuff. But then it would be masculine clothes, right? And so a trans, an agender person has to search endlessly for affordable clothing that both fits their large body and also feels congruent with their gender. If they don't just want to wear men's clothes, quote, masculine clothes, then that's going to be an issue. Like for me, I like wearing, I really like Adidas, or Adidas, as you'd say in North America. I really like Adidas. I managed to find myself an Adidas tracksuit. It's a men's one that fits. I couldn't fit into the women's ones. But for me, that was okay for me because I didn't care, because I would rather be... If it was the other way around, if I was non-binary and I was assigned male at birth, I think that would be triggering for having to buy a man's size if I identified more as a woman. Do you see what I'm saying? But because I'm more leaning towards neutrality, and masculinity is also feels fine for me, it wasn't an issue. But if I wanted to find more Adidas stuff and I really didn't want any masculine stuff, I'd be SOL, right? Because there isn't, unless you are a medium fat person and you buy like Ivy Park by Beyonce, which goes up to, and again, you'd have to be buying the gender neutral stuff, which goes to a 5X, and the women's range goes to a 3X. So yeah, again, it's difficult. It's difficult. If anyone who works at Ivy Park and they want to send me clothes, can you please do that? I would literally shit in a box with excitement because I love it so much, but it's just too expensive for me. It's just so expensive. Oh, but I love it so much. But then I'm thinking, will it fit though? I don't know. Anyway, okay, let's moving on. A genderqueer person wants to fly without drawing attention to themselves, but they face ridicule when going through the security body scanners and then are looked at with disgust while walking down the airplane aisle due to their body size. Those scanners. Oh, it's so invasive. It's so invasive. A trans woman's doctor does not refer her to get treatment for her anorexia because he reasons that restriction might help her lose weight. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wonder, being a trans woman versus being a trans man. A trans woman, the doctor might be like, well, they want to be feminine, therefore they need to be thinner to be feminine. Maybe, just having a guess. Either way, this happens to all genders, right? How many fat people have gone to the doctors and they've been like, oh, I've lost weight because I have an eating disorder. The doctors, congratulations, fatty. You're finally worthy because you lost some weight. Keep going. Oh, but I'm dying. Doesn't matter. Yeah, fun. Okay, a trans adolescent is extremely uncomfortable in their body due to the compounded effects of going through puberty as a fat person. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, puberty is a fat person. Yeah. I'm just thinking about how I felt as a fat person, totally desexualized, like one of the guys. I think that as well had a little bit to do with my personality too, because I was like the jokester, because I was like, well, no guy is ever going to fancy me, so I might as well be the class clown, and so it felt like it didn't matter that I was going through puberty because it wouldn't have an effect on who would find me attractive. But then imagine if you're going through puberty, if you're thinking about gender stuff exactly here, uncomfortable in their body due to the compounded effects of going through puberty as a fat person. Yeah. Yes. Okay. A pregnant trans man gets mistaken for being fat and doesn't get the emergency medical care he needs. Note, an article was recently published about this exact situation. Okay, so here I'm going to talk about, I'm going to read an article from USA Today about this experience of a trans man getting mistaken for fat. So if you don't want to hear about trans man pregnancy and him losing that pregnancy, skip ahead 4 minutes. Okay, so the story that we're talking about here, come on, my tab. Okay, so nurse mistakes pregnant transgender man as fat. I'm going to change the O words. Then man births a stillborn baby. When the man arrived at the hospital with severe abdominal pains, a nurse didn't consider it an emergency, noticing that he was fat and had stopped taking blood pressure medicines. In reality, he was pregnant, a transgender man in labour that was about to end in a stillbirth. The tragic case described in Wednesday's New England Journal of Medicine points to larger medical issues about assigning labels or making assumptions in a society increasingly confronting gender variations in sports, entertainment and government. In medicine, there is a similar danger of missing diseases such as sickle cell and cystic fibrosis that largely affect specific racial groups, the authors write. The point is not what happened to this particular individual, but this is an example of what happens to transgender people interacting with the healthcare system, said the lead author, Dr. Daphne Strumusa of the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. He was rightly classified as a man in the medical records and appears masculine, Strumsa said, but the classification threw us off from considering his actual medical needs. Strumsa would not say where or when the case occurred, and the patient was not identified. That's a heartbreaking example of that anti-transness and anti-fatness intersecting, leading to the death of the baby. Continuing. A trans person arrives for their consultation appointment for gender-affirming surgery, but the armchairs in the waiting room are too small for them to fit. The exam room table cannot hold their weight, and they soon find out that the surgeon has a maximum BMI requirement. So we see that a lot in regards to examples of anti-fatness and anti-transness, of ridiculous barriers for no reason whatsoever. A trans college student gets the courage to go to the gym and build muscle for his upcoming top surgery, but then is fat shamed by other students at the fitness center. So that's the end of the examples. But and so the author goes on to talk about how the intersections of transness and fatness can affect TGNB people. So here are some ways that TGNB people are impacted by these pressures compared to cisgender people. Increased body dissatisfaction and frequent body checking. Risk of dissociation from or hatred of certain parts of their bodies. Increase in disordered eating or weight and shape control behaviors, including binge eating, fasting, vomiting and laxative use. Weight loss to suppress secondary sex characteristics and or for trans feminine people to achieve the thin ideal, for trans masculine people to slow or stop the menstrual cycle, for TGNB people with a high BMI, even greater rates of body dissatisfaction and disordered eating, for trans feminine people increased experiences of sexual objectification, greater risk of mental health struggles due to the stigma of being trans and or fat. Example, desire for weight change increases reported history of suicide attempts and self-injury. Desire for weight changes increases the reported history of suicide attempts and self-injury. Risk of negative social consequences, stigma and safety concerns when physical features are not in line with societal expectations for their gender. And then for all of those stats, they've linked the sources there. Yes. Then they go on to say, here are some ways I believe we can work to support our fat TGNB friends and fellow humans. Don't comment on someone's body, practice empathy, practice self-compassion. Don't assume that a TGNB person wants their body to be in line with the binary constructions of femininity and masculinity. Yes, dig into fat positive movements. I'm summarizing, by the way. They go deeper on these things. Be critical of the way that mass media portrays TGNB people. This is important. Be critical of the way that mass media portrays TGNB people, fat people and TGNB fat people. Then, yeah. So if you look at a lot of pages for pages about non-binary people or about trans people, notice how very often all of the people that they portray are thin. They conform to ideas of what a masculine or feminine person or what a man or a woman looks like. And so I'm thinking of, there's a page called They that I like. I'm just going into it now to see if they've made any changes, but they often portray very kind of normative trans bodies. I know it's called Them. It's Them. It's not They. Them is they is a band. Them. There we go. Them. Okay. Yes. So thin, 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 thin. Slightly chubby. Thin, 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 thin. These people look cool. They're awesome, by the way. But there's a lot of like thinness. Thin, 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 thin. Yeah. So, and really like a lot of white. You know. Yeah. So, so that's fun. Okay. Check your privilege you carry in the world. Seek out medical and mental health providers who are fat positive. Blah blah blah. Okay. So I think that's really important to talk about. And yeah, it's been on my mind because, like I mentioned, I'm going on a date tonight, and it's a struggle in my mind thinking about cishet men's perception of my fatness and his potential, the guy I'm going on a date with tonight, his potential fat-phobic thoughts, and then my own gender dysphoria, bringing up, I don't know if they're my fat-phobic beliefs. They're beliefs that I know that some cishet men will have, and some other, fat-phobic people will have. And also not trusting cishet men. When cishet men say, oh yeah, because I always say, so what's your opinion on fatness? How do you feel about dating a fat person? I asked that of someone a couple of days ago, and they blocked me. And I was like, oh, well, that's your answer. They ain't interested. But anyway, even when I do say, like, and they always come back with, oh yeah, it's fine, whatever. And that they haven't had any critical thought behind that, because apart from, this is cishet men, trans men, bi men, queer men that I talk to, they've got something else to say, which is that they're educated on the topic. That they say, yeah, oh my God, fat phobia is fucked up, and I'm so sorry that that's something that you've had to deal with, or yeah, actually, they've got something to say, versus, oh yeah, no, I think everyone is equal or something, which kind of says that they haven't really thought about it, but they're open to it. But then my brain is like, am I the first fat person you've ever gone on a date with? Are you just experimenting with me? to see if you can stomach having sex with a fat person. You know, they're not clearly fat positive, but they're not clearly fat phobic either, you know. Yeah, and I've seen this where, you know, I always check, I always say, hey, what do you think of fatness? And then they say, oh yeah, no, I like it, it's great, blah blah blah. And then I'll be like, you know, say I'm just thinking about this one guy. Oh yeah, I love it, great. And so I'm like, oh okay, good. And then like a few weeks later I say, oh, so is it normally only fat people that you date? And he's like, oh, actually I've never dated a fat person. And I'm like, oh, so was that true that you love fatness? Are you just saying that? I'm gonna just take your word that it is true. But you know, it's just it's yeah, you have to take people's word for what they say, and I mean, but there's always this hesitation, right? As a fat person, what are their motives? Are they just looking for easy sex? What is going on? Are they actually very comfortable and happy and excited to date a fat person? Or are they like, oh fuck it, I've never dated a fatty, might as well try, they're here talking to me, so what the heck? Are they, you know, seriously unhappy about having to talk to a fatty, but they're desperate to get their knob sucked, and so they'll just do it anyway? You know, these are the questions that are going through my mind, and I'm sure a lot of other fat people's minds. Yeah, and so with that intersection of gender dysphoria that I'm thinking about, I think to myself, okay, well, I should dress feminine, so because he's gonna think this is. By the way, this guy has never said anything like that makes me leads me to think that he is transphobic. He's had relationships. I've not actually asked if he has relationships with fat people, but I kind of got the impression that he had. But his last relationship was with a trans woman, and so I get that kind of more. I feel more safe with him. Anyway, so I think to myself, okay, what if he thinks, oh, well, Vinny's fat, but at least they ain't masculine. At least Vinny isn't coming up here looking like a masculine non-binary person. So that's what I'm thinking him, any cis man is thinking, that at least that they could do is make up for their fatness by being feminine. Because if they are fat and non-binary masculine or androgynous, then that's too much for me to handle. As if those things are negative. They're not, by the way. They're just ways of humans to be. And then my other side of my brain is like, fuck that. Dress for yourself. Dress how you want to. If that happens to be feminine, then do that. And if it's not, don't do it. And so I'm like, yeah, fuck that. And I feel empowered. And I think about this like cool pair of combat boots that I got on sale from Eloquy, and then my leather jacket, and how badass it looks together, and then like with a rolled up jean, a little cuff on the bottom, and you know, and I'm like, yeah, that looks badass. And then another thought comes up of, but then he is going to be worried about your version of non-binary. Perhaps he only wants to go on a date with you because you've appeared so far to be feminine to him. And if you show up on a date tonight, this is the second date, looking more androgynous, then he's going to be like, no. And then I'm like, okay, well, oh my God, yeah, I need to keep the feminine up. Because if I then, you know, all of a sudden change and switch to something more androgynous, he's going to be like, what the fuck? This is not what I signed up for. Even though it's only like one date and pictures on my dating profile. So then I'm like, okay, well, you know, next time I'm on online shopping, I'm going to buy a frilly dress. Even though it makes me feel blur when I see it. When I see myself wearing it. And then I'm like, fuck that. No, I'm not doing that. No, I'm going to do what makes me feel good. Then I think about how I don't wear many things that show my cleavage, and that men like cleavage on the whole. And then, I think, if I'm going to be fat and non-binary, I may as well flaunt my fat tits. So I think about, what do I own that is low cut? Not really anything. Unless I unbutton a shirt. So maybe I should buy something that shows off my tits to confuse men into thinking that I am a woman and a sexy woman. And I'm not like one of these bad fatties who is, androgynous. And then I'm like, no, fuck that. What the fuck? Be yourself. If you want to show off your tits, show off your tits. If you don't, don't. And so then I'll see a super cool non-binary person on Instagram and I'm like, yes, that's who I am. And I feel buoyed again and resolute again to not give in to these transphobic, fatphobic thoughts. So it's a merry-go-round in my head due to dysphoria and misogyny and fatphobia, and it's frustrating, and I'm not used to feeling like this. And the cishet male gaze is really fucking with me. I feel like if I was on a desert island and I didn't have to deal with cishet male gaze, I wouldn't be having these feelings at all. I mean, if we all lived on a desert island, we wouldn't be having fatphobic feelings, probably, because it's society that makes it so difficult, right? And before I realized that I was non-binary, I didn't give a fuck about what men thought about my body in regards to fatness. Obviously, I did previously, but in the most recent history, and I still don't. As a standalone issue, if a guy says I'm not attracted to you because you're fat, I'm like, well, your fucking eyeballs are wrong because I'm gorgeous. Your loss. But then when you combine it with how I'm working out to be my authentic non-binary self, then all sorts of shit comes up, and that same defiant, confident levels of I don't care what they think, because if they don't like me, then it's a them problem. And I'm still in these kind of like baby giraffe legs of being like, oh, but maybe I should wear a nice dress and maybe I should, and it's kind of, it feels like before when it was kind of like, well, maybe I should wear something black and something, maybe I should wear shapewear and maybe I should wear high heels to make myself look as feminine and as thin as possible. And the performance of femininity that I would put on in order to, quote, make up for my fatness was the thing that I dealt with. And then I obviously unlearn a lot of that stuff, and in that unlearning it was examining my performance of femininity, not the stuff which just naturally feels good, because there's a lot of stuff that would be that I like doing that is classed as feminine, like wearing lipstick or earrings or whatever, and that's for me because I genuinely enjoy it. I don't think about how men are being like, oh my god, look at their earrings, I really want to fuck them because of their earrings, like I don't think like that. Whereas before it would be certain things, doing certain things to attract men, which didn't necessarily feel authentic to me, or doing it to make up for my perceived flaw of fatness. And so I guess what it is it's my own transphobia, right? It's my own belief that being non-binary is less worthy, less desirable, less attractive than being a cis woman. And that my expression of my gender has to align with very rigid ideas of femininity, or being a good non-binary person, as in non-binary in name only. Not saying that that was what a good one, good as in, good or bad fatty. These are social constructs and tropes, right? That a guy, me thinking about their biases and trying to minimize myself so that I don't trigger their biases. And when I think about it in regards to just fatness, I'm like, well, they're fucking lucky that my body might trigger biases, because then I'm giving them a free fucking education. If they are having feeling a certain way about my body and its fatness and being like, oh, I don't like this, then you're welcome. You're welcome. And see you later, because if you don't do the work to sort that shit out, then it's got nothing to do with me, because I'm feeling fucking good in my body as a fat person. And so I'm not there yet with my non-binary identity, which is just gets on my fucking tits, because I don't like it. I don't like this feeling of being unsure, of second guessing myself, because I haven't felt like that in so long. And it's not it's not a good feeling, right? But also doing this stuff, like talking about it and pointing it out, and talking about this dialogue that my brain is having of the worst, darkest thoughts of buy a frilly dress and put on a wig. I was literally pulling out this wig that I have, this pink wig that I have, and being like, oh, would they be more attracted to me if I wore this? And I'm just like, for fuck's sake. It feels like there's two different Vinnies on my shoulder. The transphobic, unsure, people-pleasing version of Vinny on one shoulder, and then like the badass, fat positive, cool, confident person on the other side, being like, what the fuck are you thinking? Like, get out of here. And I don't think maybe that other side, the kind of like, what the fuck, is maybe not as helpful. Maybe being compassionate for myself versus being angry and annoyed with myself that I haven't risen to this higher level of not thinking about this shit, when I have been out as non-binary for like 12 minutes. I mean, come on. And if I think about like when someone comes to fat positivity and they feel frustrated that they're not at this certain place within, and I'm like, how long have you been doing this? And how many years have you been in this fatphobic world that tells you that you're a piece of shit and you believe it? Oh, you've been in that world for 40 years and now you think after 40 minutes you're going to be, what's the phrase, taking names and flipping tables? I mean, yeah, there will be moments when you are flipping tables and being like, fuck you, I'm fat and fabulous. But there's going to be lots of times where you're still struggling with, oh, what are people thinking? And da 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 da. And I'm there with me being non-binary, right? But what are people thinking? And when I think about it in the fat stuff, I'm just like, well, who fucking cares what they're thinking? What they're thinking is really none of your business, and you can't control what they're thinking. So do you want to try and minimize yourself to make sure that that person is comfortable seeing you and your presence doesn't trigger any biases in their brain? Or, and that's not great for you because you're having to like be a fake version of yourself. Or do you just want to live how you want and then fuck what other people think? I like the second option. I just gave myself a pep talk. Now go off onto that date, Vinny, and just crush it. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. Okay. So I want to talk about this phenomenon that I have noticed, and noticed that other people have noticed this phenomenon too, with messaging people online. And it is really fucking annoying. And I thought, okay, so the phenomenon is cishet men not asking questions in a conversation. Okay, so this is what I mean. This is a made up example. Hey, this is me. Hey, how you doing? Nice teeth. I probably wouldn't say that, but sexy looking teeth. Hey, thanks. How are you? I'm great. I just made some chili con carne, and I'm about to take my dog to the dog park. Cool. Yeah, so tell me more about yourself. Are you originally from Vancouver? What do you do for work? Yeah, I'm from Alberta, and I'm a professional cheese eater. Oh my god, cool, professional cheese eater. Oh my god, that sounds amazing. So, what's your favorite type of cheese? Brie. You know, it's like that, and it's like even when they've messaged you first, and it just makes no sense. It makes no sense. And so in that interaction, to me, I'd be like, well, clearly they're not interested. They're just responding to be polite. But, you know, that wasn't a good example. But these are people who keep messaging, right? They reach out first. They keep messaging, but they never ask you a question. I'm literally going to read out some chats. Okay, so this guy messaged me, and we were having a back and forth, and so and so I've been calling them out, and so let me read this, me calling them out, chat. So I messaged this guy, and I said, oh, okay, so where are you from originally? I'm from about Alberta originally. And so in Vancouver, it's very rare to meet someone who's actually from Vancouver. Like, say if you meet 100 guys online, maybe 10 of them would be actually from Vancouver. And so, you know, a common question is like, where are you from originally? Because, you know, so and I'd be like, oh, are you from Vancouver originally? I'm not. I'm from UK, Ireland. And so instead of him saying, oh, UK, Ireland, cool, I want to go to visit London or whatever, he just says, I'm from Alberta originally. And so no questions for me. And so I just respond, cool. Because I'm like, at this point, I'm like, are you going to ever ask me a question about me? And he responds, I guess, LOL, because I didn't think it was cool. I was just like, oh, for fuck's sake. And so then I said to this guy, so maybe you can answer me this. I've been trying to work something out. Why is it that men often, during messaging on apps, don't ask questions about the person they're talking to? This guy responds, well, as for myself, I suck at messaging/texting. Ha 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 ha, shoulder shrug. Would rather chat face to face. And so then I respond, okay, gotcha. But then if you don't ask questions, it makes the conversation end, so you'll never get to meet face to face. And then he said, guess we just got to meet in person then, laughing, winking. And then I respond, you know what? Whenever I have met people who don't ask questions over message, it's the same thing in person. Just me asking all the questions and then them not returning the curiosity. He didn't respond to that message. He was very like, oh, for fuck's sake. Oh. Okay, so here's another guy on the same day, different app, same thing. So maybe you can answer me this. I've been trying to work out blah blah blah. Why don't men ask questions? He says, well, I guess they figure it out gradually by observing the actions rather than speak. And he's got kind of chin scratching emoji. And then I said, but then it makes the conversation very one-sided. One person asking all the questions and the other just answering and not reciprocating. And he says, nope, sometimes the questions you ask raise a question in my mind as well, LOL. Don't know why that's funny. But and then I say, but it hasn't though, right? Only question you asked was when I asked you to ask a question. Because previously in the chat I said, do you want to know anything about me? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, ask me a question then. And then he asked me something, whatever. And then he went back into not asking questions. And so I say, the only time you've asked me a question is when I told you to ask me a question. And then he says, I'll ask questions as well, LOL, gradually, LOL. And then I say, but then it makes the other person think that you don't care / aren't interested, and therefore the conversation will just end, and you'll never know that it was just that you didn't ask questions. And he says, fair enough, ! Thumbs up emoji. So tell me about your hobbies. And so, tell me about your hobbies. For me, that was like, fine, for fuck's sake, I'll ask you a fucking question. Now will you shut up? That's how I read it. And so I told him a really cool thing. I was like, I'm actually starting a roller skating club in a couple of weeks, and I also like singing, and I go to a singing class once a week, and also really into watching cheesy reality shows on Netflix. Lots of content there, right? And so it's not like my hobbies are like, oh, my hobbies are breathing, and nothing for him to say in return. And he was just like, oh, and then, because then I said, what about you? And he was just like, oh, I watch Netflix or whatever. And then I was like, oh, anything that you really enjoying at the moment? And then he just kept going on about him, just talking about him, what he likes. He sent 4 messages. I didn't respond, all talking about himself. And then finally sent a question, which was, what are you doing? Which I didn't respond to. So I took this to the Instagrams, and I said, do you all notice this, that cishet men suck at conversations on the apps, on the dating apps, never asking question, and you are having to do all the legwork? And so I did a poll, and the answers were, oh my God, yes, sometimes, and not at all. And 78% of people said, oh my God, yes. 18 said sometimes, and 3% said not at all. By the way, I looked at who said not at all. 2 of the people looked like they were men. So, I don't know. But of course they could be talking to cis men. But I just thought that was funny, because almost everyone that follows me is not a cishet man. Okay, and so then I put a question box saying, why do you think that cis men often don't ask questions on the dating apps? And this is what people said, and I wanted to read out what they said, because I think it's really interesting. Honestly, I think that it's that they just don't care enough to put in the effort. They literally just expect to word vomit on them like they do. They literally just expect you to word vomit on them like they do. They don't actually want to get to know you. They're just buying time to meet face to face because they're awful. They're used to it being all about them, and if they find you attractive, that's enough at first. They don't want to actually put in any effort. They will meet up for sex, not conversation. Because they're not interested in dating, only sex, in my experience. It's a little hint they give to show you that you'll have to do all the legwork in the relationship too. Yeah. Selfishness. They aren't actually interested in getting to know the person. They just want an ego boost. They're self-centered. They think showing interest makes them vulnerable, and toxic masculinity says no to that. They only ask when they're already invested emotionally, not to find out if you're compatible. I found it just to be social laziness on their part. Someone says, cis women can be just as bad. Not really interested in meeting people, not good texters, expect others to do the work. I don't know, but I've decided I'm not going to carry a convo by myself. Don't care what your answers would be. Self-absorbed. The good ones ask questions too. Yes. Lack of social skills and not having to stay attuned to the other person's reality to survive all the time. A lot of marginalized folks are very good at attuning to others as a survival skill. I don't know, but this is my number 1 complaint with the apps. I don't know, but I hope you find out. So annoying. Because the emotional labor is always forced on the cis female. And again, People are mentioning cis female, but obviously I'm trans non-binary, so I think it's cishet men. Whoever they're dating, they just expect the labor to be on them because they think the universe revolves around them. That's usually how I screen them out, the ones who don't talk, trying to play it cool. They're just self-centered, and nobody told them it wasn't cool. No one taught them how to connect with or care for someone, but that others would do it for them. Hashtag men are trash overall, and so are the apps. Because cis men are completely self-centered and essentially babies. Yeah. I've been watching 90 Day Fiancé franchise. Oh my god. A lot of the men on that show, especially the ones who are American, are just they are babies. They're just like, oh, I can't wash a dish. I'm getting my wife over to come over here to wash my dishes and do my laundry, and I just feel I'm so embarrassed for them, for the women coming over from a foreign country to come and do the fucking laundry of this guy that probably doesn't wipe his own ass. And everyone being like, they're here for a green card. Really? Because America's the greatest country in the world? I don't fucking think so. It's the other way around. Americans are trying to get green cards to other countries to get the hell out of that place. Yeah, all of the people on the show being like, oh, everyone wants to be here. I'm like, really? Oh my god. It's just there's so much racism. Oh my god. Anyway, whatever. Continuing with the responses. Pure laziness. Being constantly on is exhausting on apps. Women are more picky, so have to be interesting to a number of men. Men play the numbers game and half-arse it for a lot of women. They're looking for partners who will do all the work. Weaponized incompetence. They have enough options that they don't need to put in a lot of effort. So common. They're self-centered, poor communicators who haven't had to try. I've noticed that most of my boyfriend's exes never ask questions in person either. I've had the same issue. I think lack of self-awareness. They don't even ask themselves questions. Yeah, they don't even ask themselves questions. A lot of men don't want to do the inner work. Questions raise potential problems. Lack of emotional intelligence, lazy, expect women to do all the work. They lie a lot, so they expect you to do it also. They observe actions and decide if you are suitable. I think they're used to not having to do the labor, honestly. They think they need to figure out the things they want to know. It doesn't occur to them to ask, in my opinion. They genuinely don't care. Women are notches on bedposts, not people. Because they don't give a fuck. As long as you look a certain way, they don't care what you have to say. Because they're lazy and expect women to do all the work. They've never been asked to do better. They just float on by with their privilege. Because straight men suck and the bar is so low for them. And finally, talk to women instead. Oh my goodness. And so it's funny because I just finished reading my last book. I was reading a book and now I'm onto my next book. And my next book is The Tragedy of Heterosexuality that my therapist recommended for me. And I'm just like, yes, oh my goodness. And I'm only like 15 pages in and I'm like, fucking, I need to get the highlighter out and just highlight everything because it's so 100% on point. Like, basically, the bar for cishet men is literally on the floor, and men don't actually like women that much. This is all kind of not every man, obviously. There's lots of great men out there who are kind and empathetic and emotionally intelligent and cool and blah blah blah. Know any? Send them my way. But really, what we're critiquing is the patriarchy and what happens because of that. And it's like it's a whole load of shit basically. And men lose out because of it, women lose out because of it, and gender non-conforming people lose out because of it. So yeah, I'm just starting this, and you know, the whole are the straights okay? Are the straights okay? It's so fucking funny. Like, go and look on like different Instagram accounts, like, are the straights okay? And like stuff that straight folks do, which is so cringe. Like, you know, like baby showers where the guy, it turns out it's a girl, and the guy throws a tantrum and is like, oh, for fuck's sake, because it's a girl, because of what he thinks about women, obviously, or you know, saying, oh, gay people, don't force your sexuality on us, and then having things like, oh my god, there was this one, someone announcing their pregnancy by saying, like, we made a cake, 1 cup of mummy, 3 squirts of daddy. Oh, so gross. Can you imagine a queer couple doing that? Like, no, because they don't like. Okay, I'm going to find some more examples. I'm going to see who because I started following them last night. My people who I'm following is not in order of when I followed them. Rude. What's the name of it? Anyway, just look for the hashtag are the straights okay, for hilarious examples of, you know, just straight people like forcing sexuality onto others, doing cringy things. And actually, you know, the whole like, oh, ball and chain, oh, you know, and women actually not liking men's bodies and thinking penises are gross. By the way, I fucking love a penis, me. But you know, a lot of people would really probably do better just not being with a man or a woman, you know, just because they don't actually like them that much. It seems like. And anyway, I'm only like 17 pages into this book, but it's so really interesting. And so anyway, so that's the end of the episode. I've been rambling on for about 50 years. I hope you enjoyed it, and just hashtag not all men, because I know there's gonna be some people who be like, you hate men, or you hate straight people. Probably not, because everyone who listens to the podcast is really cool. But just in case anyone's like thinks that I hate men, I don't. I love men. That's why I want to have sex with them and be with them. Just most men are giant bellends because they haven't done any work to get up to the level of what we've all been doing. The rest of us have been trying to not be the same bellends that we were 10 years ago. Men are still there from 10, 20 years ago. You know, when you see a post on Facebook of a memory of you from like 2008, and you're like, and you read it, and you just, and it's just so embarrassing. I'm not the most shameful thing that you've said, you know, and you're just like, if I knew that person, I would unfriend them. Yeah, so a lot of men are still there in 2008 version of themselves, and they've not moved on, whereas the rest of us have moved on and are like, oh yeah, I was a bit of a bellend, but now I've read some books and done some therapy and trying to be better. Still probably lots of bellend qualities about me, but I'm trying. Whereas, yeah, a lot of people are just like, nah, man, fucking 2008 me was fucking cool. Yeah. Okay, well, hope you've had fun today. Links to everything that I've spoken about in the show notes, fiercefatty.com/123. If you work at a company and you want me to come in and talk about fat phobia and all of this type of stuff, then just send me an email, okay? If you're a dietitian, a nutritionist, a therapist, you want me to train your staff, then reach out to me. If you want me to help you with making sure that your shit is not fat phobic, reach out to me. If you want to tell me that I'm the love of your life, and that you have someone for me to date in Vancouver, then reach out to me. And I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day. And I'll see you in the next episode. Okay, goodbye. See you later, fatties and fatty allies. Goodbye.